Привіт із Курахова. Складається таке враження, що ми тут на самоті. Розрахунки благ, ПТО, броня, всі вже вийшли. Залишились тільки мобілізовані. Нахуй ми тут сидимо. Це якийсь йобаний цирк. Потрібен наказ на вихід із Курахова. Таке враження, що нас тут кинуть нам.
Overall, the situation remains the most critical for the Ukrainian armed forces on the Pokrovsk-Kurakhove front, as well as around Velika Novosilka, with potential catastrophic implications. Over the past week, Russia launched over 1,100 attacks, with around 75% of these occurring in the aforementioned sectors. Meanwhile, the front line further north remains largely stable. And here's a summary of what we will be covering in today's report. Kursk front has shown a consistent trend towards stabilization in recent weeks. Russian forces are advancing, deploying significant human and technical resources, according to Ukrainian media, but their progress remains minimal. The only notable achievement for the Russian army was pushing Ukrainian troops from a bridgehead south of Plehovo. To the south, the situation in the city of Chasiv War is gradually deteriorating for the Ukrainian defenders. The Russian army currently controls approximately 25% of Chasiv War, with another 25% in a contested grey zone. The main clashes are concentrated in the Uspenivka and Novoolenikva districts. In Toretsk, the situation is quite similar to that of Chasiv War, i.e., the Russian forces are gradually pushing Ukrainian troops out of the city, but the process is slow, amounting to only a few micro-districts per week. However, while the northern front approaching Pokrovsk, including Chasiv War and Toretsk, somewhat holds its ground, the southern front sees Ukrainian forces struggling to contain Russia's advances. Over the past week, Russian troops breached 4 kilometers towards Pokrovsk, fully occupying villages such as Novoolenikva, Toretsk, and Vyzhrodzhenia, formerly Novi Trud. And perhaps most notably is the situation around Kurakhove, the fall of which even Ukrainian analysts admit is now inevitable. On one hand, despite more than 300 attacks per week, Russian forces have modest gains on the Kurakhove front. However, even these minor advancements, considering the overall situation, are fatal blows that bring Kurakhove's fall closer, although this process will likely extend over the next few weeks. As a result, the focus for the Ukrainian defenders is not on holding Kurakhove, but rather on withdrawing Ukrainian troops, both from the city itself as well as its southern areas, with as minimal losses as possible. And perhaps the Kurakhove front is the best place to start today's report. So let's get into it.
Мы на границе с Россией, ожидайте. Путин, мы идем за твоей головой, блядь.
Воздух! Воздух!
One of the most vulnerable areas for Ukrainian troops is the defense of Uspenivka and several villages to its east. Russians have made a breakthrough from Dali, advancing 2.5 kilometers and approaching the outskirts of Uspenivka, where fighting has been ongoing for a week. Simultaneously, from the south, Russian troops are advancing through Trudove, which is already half captured. Despite this, the Ukrainian armed forces are holding their positions in a pocket that is fully exposed, as the narrowest part of Ukrainian control zone is only slightly over 2 kilometers wide. But this situation cannot continue for long, The withdrawal of the Ukrainian defense forces toward Uspenivka and then Constantinople should happen any day now, says a Ukrainian expert. Moreover, in all villages on the path of withdrawal, fighting has been ongoing for a week, including in Sukhi Yaly, Konstantinopolsky, and now Uspenivka. Therefore, the only route of withdrawal is the road leading to the village of Dachny. However, the situation here remains quite critical. On the northern flank of Kurakhove, Russian forces have managed to fully occupy the village of Stary Turny and establish fire control over the only road out of the city. For nearly a week, they have been attempting to cross the Vovcha River to completely block the path for the Ukrainian Defense Forces' retreat, and are also developing an advance on the village of Shevchenko to stretch the front line further. Ukrainian military expert Dmytro Sneryov, in an interview on Ukrainian TV, says that the Russian army has advanced within Kurakhove's urban area, particularly in the vicinity of high-rise buildings. His words were as follows. After the capture of Stary Turny, the issue arose regarding the potential encirclement of Ukrainian military positions in the Kurakhove industrial zone area, particularly around the Kurakhove thermal power plant. This poses a serious challenge for Ukrainian defenders. Additionally, enemy advances have been recorded within urban areas, particularly near high-rise residential buildings. The Russians are striving to completely block Ukrainian armed forces units and prevent the organization of a prolonged defense at the Kurakhove power plant. According to the military expert, the situation became tense following the capture of the village of Shevchenko. There is a specific threat of a flanking maneuver against Ukrainian positions and a potential advance of Russian forces towards the Pavlograd-Pokrovsk highway, which serves as a key logistical artery for Ukraine's defense forces. Thus, the situation in the Kurakhove-Pokrovsk direction is developing quite dynamically. Another Ukrainian expert, Vladislav Seleznyov, who is a colonel with the Ukrainian Armed Forces, as well as a former spokesman of Ukraine's General Staff, noted that Ukrainian defenders near Kurakhove are holding a narrow stretch of the front line, which is heavily targeted by Russian fire. The distance between the vanguard units of the Russian army and the road connecting Zaporizhia and Donetsk via Kurakhove is approximately 1.5 kilometers. In his interview with Ukrainian TV, he said that, according to the deep state map, Stary Turny in the western part of the Kurakhove reservoir is already under the control of the Russian army. The distance from the vanguard units of the Russian army to the road passing through Kurakhove and connecting Zaporizhia with Donetsk is approximately 1.5 kilometers. This means that Russian FPV drones, mortars, and artillery systems fully cover this road, making it extremely difficult to ensure stable logistics for the Ukrainian garrison in Kurakhove, explained the military expert. He noted that the dynamics of this section of the front are alarming. How quickly Russia can advance will depend on the effectiveness of Ukrainian units' actions within the framework of maneuver defense. Can we maintain control over the situation in the Kurakhove region, he asked, only to answer it himself, and I quote, I have very reasonable doubts. To see why, he said, it's enough to look at the deep state map. The narrow section of the front defended by the Ukrainian Defense Forces is heavily targeted by Russian artillery and vulnerable to guided bomb strikes. Therefore, it is likely unreasonable to assume we can hold this area in the foreseeable future. I hope that through maneuver defense and rearguard battles, we will manage to withdraw Ukrainian personnel who have been defending these positions, as well as save equipment and supplies, noted the Ukrainian Armed Forces colonel. The Ukrainian Armed Forces somewhat stabilized the situation within the city of Kurakhove itself, which helped to prevent Russian troops from making rapid advances. For the Ukrainians, the Kurakhove garrison must hold its position until additional units from the southern flank can reinforce it. Only then can Ukrainian forces withdraw to new positions around the villages of Bogota and Constantinople. The coming days or weeks will determine whether the Ukrainian military can simultaneously exit multiple pockets in which Russians are trying to trap them. Further north, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to escape from the pocket north of Beretsky and with rearguard battles are retreating towards Sonstevka and Shevchenko. However, Russian troops have also reinforced the advance and captured half of Sonstevka, attempting to cut off the Ukrainian Defense Forces' path of retreat. And to add salt to the wound for the Ukrainian armed forces, the Russians seized the village of Shevchenko, just 4 kilometers from the southern outskirts of the district center. Russian forces have a tactical advantage, choosing multiple vectors for their offensive, with a key strategy being to bypass Pokrovsk from the south to cut off railway communications and eventually reach the main route connecting Pokrovsk and Pavlograd. At the same time, another Russian group is advancing westward to secure the depth of their flanks. They have already cut off the road to Kurakhove and advancing south towards Novoolenikva, have formed a pocket for Ukrainian troops holding positions in Jumatsky, formerly Pushkini. To avoid being encircled, the Ukrainian defense forces must withdraw from their positions. Further south, Russian troops are developing an offensive towards Ukrainka, effectively cutting off one of the possible retreat routes of Ukrainian defenders of Jumatsky. Additionally, they are entering the village of Zoria behind Ukrainian troops, who have held here for several weeks, preventing Russian forces from advancing westward. Another direction of Russian attacks is the formation of a broad belt around the southeastern approaches to Pokrovsk. Here, Russian forces continue their advance along the road from Selidove and have started fighting for Dachensky, which is 5 kilometers from Pokrovsk. At the same time, an advance through Lisivka continues. Ukrainian military personnel on the ground point to miscalculations by leadership during the defense preparation of Pokrovsk. Public calls for action are being made to stabilize the situation and prevent a catastrophe. Velika Novosilka, however, breaches for a major attack from all directions.
Нихуя мы закатились на хохлядские позиции. Нихуя они тут черти ебаные живут. Еще вон все. Шпроти? Шпроти? Шпроти нахуй. Все тут у них. Да. Козлы ебаные. Кровати еще нахуй в целлофане, блядь. Бункер во какой нахуй. Охуеть. Окопы ебать в рот. 3 метра нахуй. Глубиной, но это завтра. Курки. Курки. Жратвы тут, сука. Всякой разной, нахуй.
Как сволоча, слушай, залезли и в бункер. Потом срали с время, что видели. Как это дальше будем видеть?
Газ, нахуй. Для портативных газовых приладит, блядь. Пидоры, сука, вонючие, нахуй. Вот это укрепы, блядь, вокруг Великой Новоселки.
Though the Ukrainian armed forces repelled the Russian advance from the north, driving them out of Novi Komar and launching counterattacks in Rozdolivka, Russian forces are tightening their grip around Ukrainian most fortified position on the Berdyansk front. Russian forces occupy Blahodatne and align their front along the Sukhi Yaly river. Simultaneously, Russian troops breached the Ukrainian defense to the east of Rivnopil, attempting to encircle Ukrainian defenders in Makarivka, who are now caught in a crossfire and cannot hold their position for long. Therefore, it is likely that soon we will see a withdrawal of the Ukrainian armed forces towards Velika Novosilka, or an attempt to stabilize the front as it approaches in Neskuchny. Consequently, the Ukrainian defenders of Velika Novosilka find themselves in a situation where they will need to maintain a 360-degree defense from the east, south, and quite possibly the north as well. The most critical flank remains the western side, through which Russian forces could cut off logistics. If that happens, the loss of Velika Novosilka would become inevitable. However, the Ukrainian command, perhaps quite ambitiously, believes that this remains a prospect for not even this year. Now, having dealt with the most precarious parts of the front for Ukraine, that is, the southern Donbas front, we will now move to the Toretsk and Chasiv War sectors and finish off with the Kursk salient up north. In Chasiv War, the Ukrainian forces reportedly continue to hold the defense at the refractory plant, where Russian forces are attempting to dislodge them. The battle for the plant has been ongoing for several weeks. For a long time, the Russian forces had only managed to secure a few utility buildings on the outskirts of the area. However, as of today, unconfirmed reports suggest that Russians have advanced and have taken the refractory plant, and that the Ukrainian defenders only hold a few western buildings. Thus, the Russians have reportedly reached the center of Chasiv War. Meanwhile, in Toretsk, as reported by soldiers directly from the battlefield, it is impossible to establish a clear front line, as Ukrainian and Russian positions are heavily intertwined and often penetrate deep into each other's territory. This week, the Russian forces captured a significant portion of the Zabalka district, while another 50% remains contested with ongoing fighting. If the entire Zabalka area falls, Russia could begin flanking the city's industrial zone from the south, complicating its defense considerably. Currently, the key clash where Russian troops are focusing their maximum efforts is around the Centralna, or in English, the Central Mine. Where Ukrainian forces have a strong fortified area. The Russian army is attempting to break through Ukrainian defenses there and has made minor advances. Similarly, Russian forces have managed to occupy several dozen buildings north of the Central Avenue. Lastly, we move up north to talk about the Kursk salient, where, to be honest, not much has happened in the past week.
2024 года подразделениями ОБСПН «Курские Витязи» совместно с подразделением ОБСПН «Арбат».
In this area, the Russians have formed a bridgehead south of Plehovo and pushed the Ukrainian forces approximately 2 kilometers to the right bank of the Sel River. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, the village of Plehovo has been liberated along with the village of Darino on the western flank. At the same time, Ukrainian forces claim that they continue to fight for the village of Plehovo itself, alleging that they maintain control over its northern part and the entire area north between the settlement and the river. A downside to this Ukrainian withdrawal was a Russian incursion into the Sumy region, where they occupied several kilometers of uninhabited border territory. However, it's uncertain whether the Russians plan to hold or expand this foothold, as it holds no strategic or tactical significance, as assessed by Ukrainian military experts.
В последнее время происходят интересные события, и кажется, что Польшу готовят на замену Украине в войне с Россией. От товарищей из Европы поступают сообщения о большом перемещении военной техники из европейских стран в Польшу. Перемещение настолько серьезное, что просто бросается уже в глаза на европейских автобанах. Во Франции автобан А63 между Байон и Бордо. На фото колонна. В ней было несколько десятков грузовиков. Грузовики с польскими номерами тянут военную технику. А это уже возле Магдебурга, Германия. Колонна движется в сторону Польши. Везут массово, небольшими колоннами, но тоже военную технику. Вот еще одно сообщение из Польши. Это порт Свиноустья. Стоят корыта, вроде как военные. Поразило количество военных грузовиков на польских дорогах. Их как мух в сельском сортире. Шныряют туда-сюда. В основном древние. Где-то так 70-х, может 80-х годов. Если бы не почтенный возраст техники, которую тащат, то можно было бы подумать, что в Польше увеличивают контингент НАТО или там готовятся какие-то новые военные учения, но с техникой, которая уже списана, с вооружения западных стран, ну вряд ли. Такое просто не может быть. Конечно, можно подумать, что эта техника через Польшу идет на Украину, но в том-то и дело, что если и идет, то лишь малая ее часть. Да и гораздо удобнее технику на Украину поставлять через Румынию. Вооружение и техника в Польшу идут таким потоком, что как перед серьезной войной вооружают поляков гораздо сильнее, чем перед СВО вооружали украинцев. Можно предположить, что Запад, с учетом всех ошибок, совершенных на Украине, готовится бросить в противостояние с Россией как минимум Польшу и Прибалтику.